Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. My name is MiAh the King, and my boss said, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. So I went in as Batman. Now then, today we're taking a look at a game just released on Steam called Cataclismo, hope I'm pronouncing that right, developed by Digital Sun and published by Hooded Horse, and I just love those names. Those are some awesome names. Anyway, released in early access and selling for $30. So, what is this game? Well, the best brief explanation I can give is it's a defensive building game. It's a game where you build troops and defenses to repel these invaders. That's basically all this game is. So, you see, a long time ago, something unexplained showed up, aliens or something, I don't know, and gave these humans this cool power which kind of helped them, like, ascend, right? So, humans flourished, but then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Everything changed when the power got out of control. When it did so, it created this awful mist stuff that covered the globe, and anyone exposed to the mist for too long becomes these horrible abominations that go around killing and destroying everything. Who knew? Humanity falls, and now only one great defensive city remains. You play as a chosen one, a girl who was born with one of those ancient powers inside her chest. Now she must use her powers, and after her years of studying, to lead her people into finding this ancient tool and, using it to forever banish the mist. That's the gist of the storyline. Honestly, I could have given you probably a little bit more detail, but I didn't really understand a lot of what they were saying because they kept using their fancy schmancy words. Some could be made up, some could be legit, I have no idea. But whatever, I got the gist of the story, and now so do you. So let's go into the good and the bad, followed by my final thoughts, shall we? Okay, so as always, let's go into the good first. And at first, I wasn't really a fan of the artistic design choice for the graphics and looks of this game, but the longer I played it, the more it just seemed to make more sense to me. They want their own unique look, yet at the same time they want it to remain kind of dark, hopeless, and depressing due to the nature and lore of the game. And while it might not be the best looking game in terms of graphical quality, there are some nice things here. I like the contrasting colors, I like the color design choices period, I like the brief moments of attention to detail. Hell, some of the graphical design choices almost make it look like a low-quality game from like 20 years ago, but instead of making me retch, it's making me reminisce of good times. So even though I typically don't like this style of artistic design, I still found myself pleasantly content with it. Next up for the positives is the sound design. The music is absolutely hopeless and depressing, which for this game is perfect. The voice acting is not great, but not terrible. It's passable. Like, I didn't find myself cringing at it or anything. I was even listening for inflections in their tone when discussing certain things and didn't find it lacking, so that was good, because that's normally the big thing for me when finding poor voice acting. As for the sound effects, well, they sound pretty bare bones, but for the most part, they were fine. Basically, the sound design here was slightly better than passable, so that's why I put it in the positives. It had its really good moments, and it had some just okay moments. Next up for the positives is the gameplay. When I first started looking at this game, I was thinking to myself, this is not really my kind of game. I'm probably not going to like it. However, the more I played, the more I discovered, and I learned, and I got into it. For instance, I thought this was just going to be a mindless building game where you defend against hordes over and over again. And it kind of is that, but I was surprised to find a story with voice acting. I was surprised to find a campaign, or hero units, or units at all that I could control. Diverging paths, skilled trees, unlockables, research. Like, there was far more here than I was anticipating, and all of it seems fairly well done. The game has 3 modes of play: skirmish mode, endless mode, and campaign, each with their own mechanics, rules, and ways to play, so there's lots of varieties here for lots of different people. I only tried out 2 simply because they're the only ones that I myself was interested in, endless mode and campaign. But I'm getting distracted. I want to continue with the next positive point, which is the gameplay. The way it works is actually how you would expect a strategy game to work. You need to build houses for workers so they can work the quarries and the lumber mills or whatever else you need, or to recruit soldiers. Instead of food here, you need oxygen because, the mist everywhere and it's always encroaching on you, and you guys gotta breathe, so you have your own little oxygen things. And you can research new buildings and objects to utilize. Every night, the horde comes, and you need to be prepared for when they do. Research traps, build walls, recruit the right troops, and then make sure your units are properly placed. What do I mean by that? Well, you have these battlements or parapets on the walls that increases units' range, and you can place banners to increase their damage. The higher you build your walls, the stronger they become. Certain unit types have to work at certain heights. Like archers get more damage and more range the higher they up, but then you have these other units called lobbers that do area of effect damage, and they actually do more damage if they're at a lower height. So this is the kind of thing I mean when I say you want them to be placed appropriately. Every wall piece needs support or else the wall will be unstable, and that's going to be important. And this is going to end up being the main mode of play, properly building defenses in the most effective way to deal with the incoming hordes, because at first they're simple enough, but as the nights go on, the hordes start to become a little insane. Having the proper units and having them placed properly for prime effect, as the nights only get worse the longer you play, right? That's basically the game. But at the same time, you'll need to maintain your oxygen supply, your resource gathering, and since they can come from any direction at any night, you need to be prepared to adapt and cover all your directions. The gameplay repetitive loop here is intriguing, I must admit, despite it being fairly simple. Just like you have different types of units that accomplish different things, so do the hordes, and you'll have to adjust accordingly or learn to have all your bases covered. And it's pretty much this over and over again. So if you're a fan of defend against hordes of enemies games, then this is your bread and butter right here. Next up for the positives, for me at least, was the tutorial. It works well and moves in conjunction with the gameplay, or the campaign, sorry, helping you learn step by step in a simple and easy to understand way, while at the same time letting you partake in the game's story to keep you invested. I feel like this is how all tutorials should be, and while it didn't necessarily teach me every little detail, it taught me enough to understand most of what I needed to know, and I could figure out the rest. So that's why it's in the positives. Alright. So that's all I could think of positively to talk about in the game. Now we'll move on to the negatives, but before that, a tiny message here. Do you realize how hard it is for smaller YouTube channels to grow? You might not realize this. It's so impossible that 90% of YouTubers fail within the first year. Want to know why? Because of YouTube's own algorithm. YouTube advertises videos and pushes videos out into a wider view, but only if they have views already. So if you are new and don't have views, YouTube basically, with its automatic systems, buries your videos, which is why I need your help. Every single like, comment, view, and subscription helps YouTubers get us seen more in the big wide world. So every little bit you're willing to do helps me out exponentially, and it's why me and so many other YouTubers always ask for help. So if you found my video entertaining or at least informative, please consider supporting its growth today by doing those things I mentioned earlier. Thank you. Now then, on to the negatives. So the first negative for me was the stability. Now, don't get me wrong, for the most part, the game did work really well, and unfortunately I don't have the clip of this bug I found. For some reason, OBS didn't record it, and now I don't have it, unfortunately, so I'm sorry, and you're gonna have to take my word for it. But it's the pathing of the hordes. At least during endless mode, I was waiting 10 minutes for the last few guys of this horde to show up, and the night never passed, and they just never approached my castle. They didn't ever. I ended up having to build my own army and go searching for them, which apparently the enemy has bases too, didn't know that, and I had to lose half my army, half my resources, to just edge those little shits out of their stuck state. There were other issues as well, such as certain buildings not placing despite having the room to do so, or certain attacks simply not connecting, but those two were just so minor and I only saw once or twice, so I didn't really want to mention them, but I'm trying to be as honest as I can. The stability of the game in general was actually really good for the most part. The only big issue I felt worth mentioning was the pathing of the enemy units. And honestly, that's all I could really say badly about the game, that the enemy unit's pathing needs some adjusting. I went back and forth, and I tried really hard to find anything that I could wrong with the development of this game, and I couldn't really find anything. Anything I did come up with was so minor and inconsequential that I ended up just realizing it wasn't worth mentioning. So yeah, the game is really well made in almost every single regard. It's a base building defense game, and it's designed really well. My final thoughts? Well, despite the game not being for me, I can tell how well crafted it is. This game is so well put together that I could barely find anything wrong with it. It's not my kind of game, as I've said. However, despite that, they found a way to make it my kind of game, with an interesting story, interesting characters, interesting lore, and addictive gameplay components. I think this game is a phenomenal game. Very well developed, very well thought out, well designed, and honestly it is worth every single penny of its asking price, and perfectly priced at that. If you're a fan of base building games, defensive games, or strategy games, then this one is a fairly well thought out, well designed choice, and you should definitely consider giving it a chance. And don't forget, this is just early access. Early access, and it's this well made and well designed. There's more to come, and I find this game to be a very safe investment. If you are a fan of games of this style, then I highly recommend you check it out. You will not be disappointed. There's a little something for everyone here, and the devs and the developers like this definitely deserve our support. Alright everybody? Alright, so that's all the time I got for this video. Thanks so much for watching, with a special thanks to those of you who stuck around till the end. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.